This is how you can be more persuasive. Now, one of my favorite books, I think I've probably gifted more than 50 copies over my career, is this one right here. It's by Dr. Robert Cialdini, and it's called Influence, and it's about the psychology of persuasion. And what he did was he actually, I think the book's about 30 years old now, but the doctor, he looked at the principles and these different studies of why people do things and how we're influenced and how we're persuaded to do things. I think it's like mandatory reading for absolutely anyone in sales and marketing, because it helps you understand the psychology behind influence and why we do things, and also why people are doing things to us. And so today I wanted to walk through actually what the 6 principles of influence are. So number 1, first principle is social proof. So, and this is if you ever, there's 2 cafes next to each other, one's busy, one's empty. So you go to the one that's busy because obviously it must be better. Social proof is when we see other people doing things, obviously, we know that it might be better. But this applies a lot in business. So when we see testimonials and case studies, that's examples of social proof. People are upset on Instagram at the moment because their likes were taken away, and that's specifically an example of social proof. If you've ever sat through a sales presentation or delivered a sales presentation where you've got a page filled up with all of the logos of your customers, I remember at the early days at LinkedIn, we used to talk about, this percentage of the Australian stock market or the ASX 200 were already customers. That's another example. But social proof is one of the first and like a really powerful element of influence. The second principle of influence is likeness. So we like people who are more like us. And that can be things around community and, similar habits. So if you think about in a sales situation, when people first meet each other and we're talking about establishing rapport, often what people look for is likeness. People who went to the same university or college, people who are into the same sport, so those sorts of things. So that principle of likeness is really important. People use this a lot in sales and marketing, particularly when you talk about building a community, building a tribe. Whenever you're hearing people talking about that, really they're talking about that principle of likeness. The third principle of psychology is authority. And quite simply what that talks about is if we perceive someone as an authority, we're more likely to believe what they say. And so again, we see this a lot. And so some brands try to establish authority. So if they're using thought leadership and those sorts of things, we try to demonstrate authority and credibility by doing events and inviting people into our space to teach them about us and our business, displaying of your qualifications. And we do it like, if we've got all of the different, we're a Google partner or a LinkedIn ad partner or whoever it might be, and including those logos on your website, you're doing all of those as examples of authority. Anytime you see someone's LinkedIn profile and there's a picture of them speaking at an event along that banner along the top. So that's all about establishing authority and credibility. So the fourth principle of influence is reciprocity, which is reciprocity is about if we give something to someone, then they're more likely to feel the desire to give to us in return. And so that happens in sales and marketing. The sales classic example is, when you show up to a sales meeting with a little bit of free swag, here's your free meeting or your free diary. I think I've got a couple of them here on my desk right now. So the reason that salespeople give, like either you're giving it or the reason that you're receiving this free offers of value is based around that principle of reciprocity. That person's done something for me, I'm more likely to want to do something for them. So gifts, swag, ebooks, events, case studies, thank you dinners, lunches, all of that sort of stuff. The psychological factor at play there is reciprocity. Number 5 is scarcity. And so scarcity, we can see this happening all the time. Hurry now, there's only 4 left, 3 left, 2 left. So scarcity is super powerful. It happens all through our life. It works really well from a sales perspective and a marketing perspective. So scarcity definitely does help you get deals faster. The thing I'd like caution you from is never, ever, ever, ever do false scarcity or like fake scarcity. And people do this sometimes. And it's just, it hurts your brand over the long time. So people will say that there's a limited number of something, or, you know, this sale is only available for the next X days, and then it's never going to be around. And then of course the next week it is. It really damages trust and credibility, false scarcity. But real scarcity, super powerful. And then the last is the principle of commitment or consistency, sometimes called congruency. And that's, if I've said I'm going to do something, then I'm more likely to do it later. And how that principle plays out in a lot of different ways. And, you know, so imagine the salesperson and saying, you know, will you get back to be my next Wednesday? And your prospect saying yes. And they may not, but you've definitely made it more likely just by asking that question, because it's a commitment and people want to stay true to those commitments that they've made. So commitment, consistency, congruency. And so whenever in sales or marketing, you're looking for moments of micro commitments. So when you're speaking to someone and saying, you know, in recruitment, we talk about the example of, you know, talking to a client and saying, you know, if I hear about a great candidate, do you want to know about them? And then a week later, when you give them a call and said, you mentioned that you'd love to hear about great candidates, so I'd like to introduce this person to you. So that's the principle of commitment or consistency at play. So I'd really recommend you read that book, Influence. I'd love to hear, like, if you've got some favorite books about sales or marketing or psychology or influence, let me know in the comments. Really love to hear them. But that's those 6 principles. Number 1, social proof. Number 2, likeness. Number 3, authority. Number 4, reciprocity. Number 5, scarcity. And then number 6, commitment and consistency. Hope you found that useful. And then, yeah, again, I'd love to hear any of your favorite books or stuff that you think I should be reading. Let me know below. Thanks, LinkedIn.